What's up guys, Austen Summers back at it again with another video. We're here in front of a fucking volcano, and in honor of Men's Mental Health Month, what I'm gonna do is break down the key lessons that I've learned from the ACT therapy bootcamp that I went to. And ACT therapy is acceptance and commitment therapy, which is essentially the most science-backed therapy that allows you to be more psychologically flexible so you can move toward what matters in life, which is essentially a meaningful life that's on your terms. So lock the fuck in. We're gonna go ahead and hike up that volcano and we'll continue the video there. See you there. Why do I feel undeserving of love? Why do I feel like I don't deserve this connection? So when I was a young man, I had a very traumatic adolescence. It took me 3 months of doing basically nothing, working up the courage until I did my first approach. So on the flip side of every single negative emotion that you feel, there's something beautiful you can take out of that. What you'll find is that when you try to control these emotions or try to numb yourself away from them, it actually makes them worse. Every rejection is a brick in your palace. How many things in life do you get a fucking rush from? Honestly, there's literally like adventure sports and then there's like fucking game. And game honestly is like the most fun thing you could ever do. If you're literally dropped into this container of life, you have 80 years to make something of it. What do you want to get out of this life? What do you value? What is a part of who you are and who you're becoming in this very moment? So as I said, ACT therapy is a psychologically flexible approach to your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, so that you can basically deal with these difficult things and accept them, take a different perspective, and clarify your values so you can take committed action toward a meaningful life. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're super happy. It doesn't matter if you're thrilled with everything. What matters is that you have a meaningful life that you value, that you enjoy, that you feel like is a part of who you are and who you are becoming. So why should you care? Well, firstly, game is a game of emotions. You're emotionally relating to other people, especially women. And you know, there is a logical framework and an optimal strategy behind things, but at the end of the day, you're face to face with a woman and you're emotionally relating to her. And the primary reason that men struggle actually with dating is because it's a lead flow problem. They're not getting enough experiences. They're using experiential avoidance to go away from these difficult emotions that they're feeling, to go away from these difficult situations such as approaching. And what you find is when men are face to face with women, that's when a lot of these negative stories, these negative beliefs start to percolate and come to the surface where they can actually be addressed. But what a lot of people do is they either avoid them or they fuse with them. They say, I'm an anxious person, or they try to avoid them, say, I'm just gonna avoid this situation entirely so I don't have to think about this shit. 95% of men just don't have sufficient volume of women in their pipeline, in their funnel, to even have the results they're looking for, which at the end of the day for many of you guys might be a rotation. It might be, you know, having some fun experiences, some nice intimate adventures in the night, or having a full package girlfriend that you love, who's beautiful, and you have a great life together, and potentially some kids. A good exercise to test whether you're doing experiential avoidance is to say the following: if blank wasn't such a problem for me, I would blank. So for example, if anxiety wasn't such a problem for me, I would approach the women I'm attracted to. If not feeling good enough wasn't such a problem for me, I would go on more dates with women that I'm attracted to. So you can use this exercise. If blank wasn't such a problem, I would do blank, to find out where are the areas in your life that you're not showing up and you're trying to avoid so that you don't feel those negative emotions. Remember, if you feel those negative emotions, it's valid. Your emotions are valid. They're real. They exist for a reason. They're normal. They're a normal part of being a human. But you want to accept them, and what you want to do is take right action into those areas that you may be trying to avoid. Something to think about. So basically, you don't want to be avoiding those experiences. You want to be seeking them out. So by enabling yourself to be more psychologically flexible, you allow yourself to take the action required to have the life that you want. Now, when you hear the word therapy, you might have an instinctual and negative reaction. Like I know I do. And when I hear, you know, therapy, I think of like some fucking therapist that's sitting on a couch, lecturing someone or just listening to someone complain, and then they just keep them hooked on the session so they keep coming back, where nothing really changes in their life. The difference between traditional talk therapy and ACT therapy is that ACT therapy isn't just some random shit like talking, this type of thing. It's basically the most science-based therapy that, unlike traditional talk therapy, gives you the tools to break free from these mental loops that keep you trapped or keep you stuck and face discomfort head on so that you can build build a life aligned with your values. So it's all about values and action taking and accepting these things that come up for you. So in short, allows you to be more psychologically flexible and live a meaningful values-based life. And even someone like Andrew Tate, who was vehemently anti-therapy.
I have a genuine problem with therapy as a whole. What is therapy? Well, therapy is the idea that you need to go through life crying about the bad things that have happened to you, to some other mortal being as if they are God, and that somehow that makes things better.
When he describes the mental processes he goes through, they're actually pretty aligned with ACT therapy. He'll say things like, you know, it doesn't matter how I feel, I take action regardless, I accept everything in my life, it's my responsibility.
One of my largest problems with therapy is that it's an antithesis to my worldview, and my worldview is that action always wins.
And those are all things that are patterns and processes that are aligned with the 6 core processes of ACT therapy. So how did I find out about this? Well, at the start of the year, my main goal for this year is to be the best in-person dating coach that exists. And what I had to do is, you know, go through different resources. I'm actually going to all of my friends that do these programs, these immersion programs, these boot camps, and I'm learning from them. We're sharing information together. And I stumbled across this book called Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life by Stephen Hayes. And when I was going through it, I realized that my immersion roughly follows the same structure, and it intrigued the fuck out of me, and I just devoured the whole book in like a couple days. And then I got super deep down the funnel and went on a boot camp for ACT therapy. So what I'm going to do now is break down the 6 core processes of ACT therapy using a story from my own life. So when I was a young man, I had a very traumatic adolescence. So I had my mom pass away when I was 12, my stepdad I felt abandoned by because we cut off contact at that point, never talked again. My father wasn't the most emotionally supportive. I had a very chaotic adolescence. I didn't really have all my needs met, and it was very turbulent and crazy, and I feel like a lot of these things, they actually hurt me in terms of my relation to other people, especially women. So what I'm going to do is show you, like, if I were to step back into that time period when I was 18, 19 and talk to my younger self, what would the processes be to help me get through this difficult period of my life so that I can take action toward a life that matters to me? The first kind of chunk of the two would be openness. So I would be open to exploring these ideas of, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel undeserving of love? Why do I feel like I don't deserve this connection? And I would accept whatever comes up, right? I would accept these emotions as opposed to avoiding them, and I wouldn't fuse with them. I'd actually defuse from them and allow them to slowly release their grip on my life. So I want you guys to do this exercise right now. I want you to look at your hands, and I want your hands to visualize these negative emotions or this negative story you've been telling yourself. For example, for me, it may have been that, you know, I was undeserving of love. So if this represents this, I want to show you what fusion looks like. Fusion looks like you putting your hands over your eyes, and the problem with fusion is that you can't see alternatives. You're so closely associated with that idea that you can't see basic realities. You don't allow yourself to see alternatives. So by diffusing, you kind of allow yourself to move your hands away from your face so you can see alternatives. You can see a better possible future. And then the other thing that we tend to do with our emotions, or these stories we tell ourselves, we try to avoid them. Like, no, it's not true. Let me avoid it. Push it away. So we can represent this by like pushing our arms further away. What we find is that when you push away, at first it might feel good, but over time, how long can you hold this? 10 minutes, 20 minutes. A lot of people try to avoid these emotions like this for their entire life or for years. And what we find is this is very uncomfortable. So the actual best thing that you should do with these stories and these emotions is accept them and explore them and have this position of openness. So you could represent this by your hands at your side, kind of just open to exploring what's going on there. Why do you feel this way? So what I would do with my younger self is teach him to defuse from this. I'm not an anxious person. And also the avoidance. So I tell my younger self to not avoid situations or these emotions and try to, run away from them. Accept them, and also don't avoid putting yourself out there and meeting people. So the second chunk of this is awareness, and that's present moment awareness, and it's also flexible perspective taking using yourself as context. So I'll explain what this means. Present moment awareness, you can most easily understand by meditation. So when I was younger, I started meditating before I even did game in an effort to work on this kind of self-development aspect, right? And what I found was that by meditating and I get into my body, and when I was more like relaxed, it added some distance between me and this story I was telling myself, and me and these negative emotions feeling like I wasn't worthy of love. So when you add that distance, you can have new relations to those things. And one of the things that I learned from ACT therapy pretty recently is that on the flip side of every negative or unpleasant emotion is something beautiful. So if I feel anxiety around a beautiful woman, that means that I value having a relationship with a beautiful woman. I value love. I value connection. If I get a little bit anxious socializing, that's okay. It means I'm getting a little bit excited. It means I value living. I feel alive, right? So on the flip side of every single negative emotion that you feel, there's something beautiful you can take out of that. So like whether you're missing an ex-girlfriend, for example, what does that signify? It signifies that you had a great relationship with her. You shared some amazing, beautiful moments together, right? You felt connected. And if you feel fear, why is that? That exists for a reason. All these emotions exist for a reason. So that's something else that I would tell my younger self. And then taking flexible perspectives on something. So for example, if I feel like I don't deserve love, then maybe what I would do is say, like, instead of saying I don't deserve love in all cases, in all times, in all conditions, I could say, you know what? Let me think of a time when I was younger, when I did have that love that I wanted. Let me think of, a time even recently when I experienced that. So I guess it's not true that all the time I'm not deserving of love. It might be that I do deserve love in some instances and circumstances. So you start to add more and more distance between you and those debilitating or limiting thoughts and patterns. And that's something I would tell my younger self too, is find examples, use confirmation bias for good, and find examples that build up that new narrative. And if you guys know anything about the belief systems training stuff that I teach, you want to have that strong belief in yourself, and you build up the references over time. So you learn how to kind of cultivate that strong belief in yourself. And on immersion, we go super deep into this. So we do present moment awareness drills, meditations, and then we also have you go deep into an inner child visualization, and also a future perfect self visualization, so you can integrate that stuff into a complete whole. And the last chunk of the ACT therapy framework is engaged. What this is values and committed action. So what values are? They're chosen life directions that are ongoing, such as loving, connecting, contributing. One of my values is contributing. That's why I'm on here on the top of a volcano filming a video for you guys. Is it uncomfortable to spend $80 on an Uber to get here and hike up a mountain? Yes, but part of what I value is sharing, right? Sharing what I've learned. So values are those things that kind of give you internal motivation. So you have external motivation, your parents telling you to do stuff, your friends telling you to do stuff, feeling like your culture's telling you to do stuff, etc. like this. These are things that kind of propel you to take certain actions, but they're not necessarily chosen life directions. So you don't really value them that much. And a value that you choose, like let's say loving, connecting, contributing, those are things that are going to be ongoing values that align yourself with who you are and where you're going in life. And the only last thing to do from there is to take committed action. So for me, if I value loving and connecting, I'm going to start taking actions that are aligned with that. My values have to be stronger than the discomfort that I feel going through different situations, right? So in other words, a man with a strong enough why can endure any how. So if your why or your internal motivation is strong enough, you'll get through these parts where you feel anxious, you feel a little bit of fear, you feel a little bit of self-doubt or shame or guilt or these type of things. And then the last part, committed action. I tell my younger self, bro, just take the smallest step right now. Just take that first step going toward the life that you want. And now we're going from values into committed action. So most important thing you can take out of committed action really is that the first step that you take is an extremely small step in the right direction. So much of what we do is a habit. I think 40% of our actions are habits, and there's a huge momentum component with the things that you do in life. So you'll probably notice this, those of you who are really in the swing of game right now, you notice that it's harder to not game than it is to game. So what I would have told my younger self is you don't need to just do your first approach, because what that did for me was it took me 3 months of doing basically nothing, working up the courage until I did my first approach. What I would have told myself is, hey, just start today and literally go out and just make eye contact with people. It doesn't matter that you feel anxious, accept your anxiety. However you feel right now is good enough. Just accept it and take right action. And that right action could be eye contact, and it could be doing the next thing after that, which would be complimenting people, making situational comments. Then it could be literally like complimenting guys, it could be complimenting girls after that. Check out the desensitization plan I have in this video if you want like a complete guide on that. But basically all you need to do is be taking those small steps in the right direction, and then essentially that momentum takes over time. So now I'm going to give you an example that applies to your life right now, and I'm going to break it down in an even more simple format: acceptance, values, and committed action. So let's say you're about to go and approach girls, and you're going to approach a girl for the first time. You might be feeling some anxiety, you might feel a tenseness in your chest, you might feel a little bit of fear. You're like, fuck, what happened? What will happen if I approach this girl? What's going to happen? Is someone going to be fucking yelling at me? Someone could kick my ass? And then, so what you want to do is accept these emotions, right? These are normal human emotions, and recognize that however you feel right now is good enough to take action. Second part, values. Because you value sharing, connecting, growing, loving, contributing, adventuring, trying new things. Because you value those things, those are going to outweigh the unpleasant emotions that you feel, and you're going to take committed action in that first step of that approaching that girl, because it's in alignment with who you are and who you are becoming. So that's actually the reframe that I have in my head a lot, is this is a part of who I am and who I'm becoming. I'm willing to deal with the uncomfortability of this. I'm willing to deal with the anxiety, the emotions associated with it. I'm also willing to get rid of an old story I was telling myself so that I can create a new story and a better life. All right, so now I'm going to break this down in a couple different ways to show you how you can use this framework in your dating life. So before I go out on a date or to go, out socialize at a night game venue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this framework a bit. So I'm going to show you what I focus on. Before I go out, I almost always meditate. Why? It gets me out of my mind chatter and just gets me like into my body. So I'm kind of relaxed in the moment. And with girls, when you're super present with them, they can feel that. They can feel that like positive, free vibes from the universe like flowing out to her. And girls often say things like, I can tell that you're a kind person. I can tell that you have good intentions with me. I can tell you want to like literally make my life better. And these are the type of comments you'll start to get when you meditate consistently. So meditation allows me to like get super in my body, so when I go out, I can just have a much better time. I don't let anxiety kind of rule me because I get a little bit more distance. The second thing is I remind myself of why I'm doing game. So I'll go through my values. Like one of my values is contributing, sharing, loving, learning, growing. So those are some of my values, and they're super aligned with the actions that I'm taking. Another thing I'll do is if I feel anxious, I just accept it fully. I say, however I feel right now is good enough to take action, right? And what does that anxiety symbolize? It shows that I'm excited, I'm like looking forward to the night, that I feel alive, and I literally reinterpret my anxiety in that way. So I have this new relation to it where it's like, fuck, I'm excited as fuck. Like, how many things in life do you get a fucking rush from? Honestly, there's literally like adventure sports, and then there's like fucking game. And game, honestly, is like the most fun thing you could ever do. Now let's talk about going out. When I'm going out, I sometimes don't feel super in, the flow of everything right when I first get out there. So if I'm feeling out of it, what I'll do is I'll go through the warm-up. So I'll warm up my voice, I'll warm up my verbal ability, I'll warm up my social ability. So just do a couple exercises that we have in the course, gametransformation.com. And I'll warm up to the point where I feel like so good that I just want to start sharing it with people. When I start sharing it with people, that momentum grows and grows and grows. So approaching isn't the first step I take when I'm out. It's literally like the 7th step of a process that's just incremental. And by the time I get to approaching, I have all this good energy to share with the girls. Another thing when I'm out, whenever I feel that like anxiety to approach, I remind myself of my values, right? I want to love, I want to connect. So because I value those things, loving, connecting, I'm gonna put in the effort to take that step. So now I'm going to take out some individual lessons that I got that I think would be useful to you guys. So emotions are not something to be gotten rid of. They're not something to be fused with or just identified with. They're just normal, right? These emotions that you experience, even unpleasant emotions, they exist for a reason, and it's to keep you alive, and they evolve during a time to help you kind of bond with a group. Like, for example, anxiety. Everyone feels some degree of anxiety because that's just, it actually is powerful to keep you bonded to a group. It's meant for you to not overstep or do things that are too crazy that would get you ostracized from a group. It actually promotes group flourishing. Alternatively, in the brain, anxiety and excitement, they're actually the same emotion physically in the brain. It just depends on your interpretation of it and the perspective you take on it. So there's two ways to deal with these unpleasant emotions. There's the control agenda and there's the acceptance agenda. Human suffering will just exist, right? There will be things that come come up. There'll be unpleasant sensations that'll come up. There'll be difficult moments and difficult life events that come up. And there are, let's say, more effective and powerful ways to deal with these. And there's less effective and more debilitating ways to deal with these things that come up. So some examples of using the control agenda, it can be to numb yourself: alcohol, porn, smoking, drugs, fantasizing, procrastinating, trying harder to get over it. All of these things are on the control agenda. And what you'll find is that when you try to control these emotions or try to numb yourself away from them, it actually makes them worse. So right now, what I want you to do is do not think of a red tennis ball for the next 30 seconds. So next 30 seconds, no red tennis ball. Don't think about it. Most of you probably already failed. And this is called ironic processing theory. So in order to not think about something, you have to say, here's the thing, and I should not think about it. So when you try to say, I'm not gonna think about, the fact that I haven't approached in a while, or I'm not gonna think about the fact that, my ex broke up with me for XYZ reason. When you avoid things like that, when you avoid those emotions, it actually makes the emotions have a stronger grip on you. So in other words, whatever you resist persists. And then the effective way to relate to these emotions is to bring openness and awareness to them. Another insight is to live in alignment with your values, not your fear. So recently, I was in an amazing relationship with this beautiful woman. She was smart and funny, and she's actually rich. She was cool. We just had like the best sex of my life. And ultimately, there was a couple reasons why I think long-term, we wouldn't be the best match for each other. And I determined in that moment that I needed to end this. And I didn't want to just stay in my comfort zone and just prolong the relationship because I didn't want to hurt her feelings, or I didn't want me to feel the discomfort of going back out there and dating again. What I valued was the loving and the connection and the ability to contribute. And I felt like she was holding me back from my higher purpose in life. And ultimately, my values had to override the discomfort of ending that relationship. Because don't get me wrong, guys, I've been there in the past where I just stayed in a relationship long past the point where it went downhill. And I like this idea of, if you decide that it is not going to be in the long-term best interest of both parties in a relationship, you should end that relationship at the high point. That way you have all the beautiful memories from it. That way you can move on and reflect on this amazing relationship you have. I have nothing bad to say about my ex. She's an amazing person. But just ultimately, there was a little bit of a values discrepancy. And for me to contribute and live my highest life purpose, I do have to pursue other options at this point. It was very difficult for me to do, but when I'm living in accordance with my values, it enabled me to do what mattered most to have a meaningful life. Values also help you detach from unworkable stories in your life. So you sitting there, I want you to examine your life, and I want you to ask yourself, what are some of the unworkable stories that you've been telling yourself? Maybe, I'm not good enough. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I deserve love. I don't think I'm good enough to approach girls. I don't think I'm ready yet. I don't think I have enough value yet. I think I have to work on myself more before I can even talk to a girl. All these ridiculous stories are literally holding you back from a life that is meaningful to you and that matters. The exercise I have for you now is I want you to just kind of meditate on this idea of like, what are my deepest core values? Who am I? What do I want out of life? You're literally dropped into this container of life. You have 80 years to make something of it. What do you want to get out of this life? What do you value? What is a part of who you are and who you're becoming in this very moment? Once you write those values down, it'll allow you to detach from those old unworkable stories and try something new. And I want you to frame it like this too, like, dude, isn't it fucking boring to just live the same story again and again? To tell yourself the same fucking bullshit story again and again and again? Don't you want to see new places, see new people, experience new things, experience a new way of looking at life and relating to yourself and others? Doesn't that sound a little bit more fun than getting stuck in some fucking bullshit story that isn't even true? So discover your values, and those will lead you closer toward a more meaningful life. And now let's do the final section when you have a rejection. So for example, Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And the most like intense punch in the mouth you can take oftentimes would be getting a rejection. Because a lot of you guys, what you'll do is what I used to do. If I get rejection, that reinforces the fact that I'm not good enough, I don't deserve love, I'm a piece of shit, whatever. Whatever stories that society or your parents or people around you or rude people have told you, start kind of going through your mind. So you can start to like use this as a signpost toward a better relation with your emotions. So for example, if I get rejected, say, hey, what's up? Da, da, da. She's like, I'm not interested. I can either take that to say, whew, that was a little painful. Okay, let me take a step back. I feel a little bit of shame, or I feel a little bit of, you know, feelings of self-sabotage, or I feel like not good enough. And why do I feel that way? Well, let me explore like either childhood, or let me explore like the emotion more deeply. What's the hardest part about that for me? Hardest part of rejection, maybe being that it bruises your ego, right? You're creating this big ego of yourself and it got punctured. And that's okay. You don't need to constantly have every single girl in the entire world accept you for you to feel good enough. Some girls are gonna accept you and some girls are not gonna accept you. And that's okay, right? This is part of being normal human being. So that's one process that I go through is like, listen, just this the same as before you approach with anxiety. However you feel right now is good enough. It's like, you know, the not a big deal mentality. Some girls are gonna fucking love you. Some girls are gonna hate you, right? You don't need to overly celebrate the wins, and you don't need to overly, you know, beat yourself up over the uncomfortable situations that you find yourself in. So accepting and not fusing with, I'm not good enough, you know, this will never, I'm just like an awkward guy. No. Allowing yourself, just accepting what is and saying, that's okay. This is part of the process of learning game. And if I learn from this, what could I do better next time? Then I will get better brick by brick, step by step. Every rejection is a brick in your palace. And yeah, going again back to values, if you value connecting with women, you're going to also have to experience some rejection. So you want to think of like, maybe you've been valuing protecting your ego, or maybe you've been valuing not feeling anger or shame or sadness too much. So what you should do is actually start valuing and placing emphasis on, you know, the loving and the connecting, and realize that, you know, this painful moments that you go through is all part of the process and it's worth it in the end. So I want you to visualize right now, you have your dream girl. You can close your eyes if you want to. Visualize you have your dream girl. She loves you. She's loving on you. You're waking up next to her in a bed. There's like light coming in the window. You're smiling. You feel content. Maybe get a little bit of morning intimacy. You go out to breakfast with her. You go on a fun little adventure. I want you to envision that girl for you. Like, what does she look like? You know, hair color. What does her face look like? Body type. Also, what does she like to be around? Maybe she's supportive or feminine. She's intelligent. She has interesting things to say. She's amazing in bed. She supports you. She's confident. She's even funny. I want you to imagine those qualities you want in that ideal girl. And then it's 5 years in the future, you have that perfect girl. And I want you to reflect back on the past 5 years and think, was it worth it going on that fun, crazy self-development and game journey in order to have such a special woman in your life? And if the answer is yes, then fucking do it, bro. So hopefully this was a useful video for you guys. And I've integrated ACT therapy into all of the coaching that I do, whether you take mentorship with me online, whether you do immersion with me in person, or whether you just buy my course, Game Transformation, at GameTransformation.com. I'm embedding this in all of the things that I'm doing because it's so powerful, and it helps you guys not only get results, but ultimately have a great relationship with yourself and a great relationship with another woman. So if that sounds like you and it sounds like something you want to have in your life, go to AustenSummers.com and join one of my coaching programs. So hopefully that was useful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.